Calvin Klein, A History and Timeline. The brand, which celebrates 56 years in business in 2024, continues to reinvent itself based on strong roots in minimalism, sexual provocation, gender fluidity, and high-low. When one conjures up Calvin Klein, one thinks of the master of minimalism, sexual provocation, marketing genius, gender fluidity, streetwear, high-low, and celebrity relationships. Over its 56 years in business, the Calvin Klein brand has grown into an international powerhouse full of groundbreaking moments, sensational collections, some much-publicized personal escapades, fights with licensees, a takeover by PVH Corp., and many controversial and breakthrough ad campaigns. Through it all, Klein's products have continued to sell. Global retail sales of Calvin Klein products were about $9.30 billion in 2022. When Klein was engaged with the house he co-founded, he turned out of the moment, trend-setting collections. Along with his mastery of the runway, think barely their slip dresses, the sensuality of the 70s, the street vibe of the 90s, he was closely aligned with his jeans and underwear, which came to define much of his commercial success. Along with fragrance, Klein was one of the first designers to understand that fashion is much more a calculated point of view than a price point. His clothing over the decades went from snappy cuteness to seductive chic. According to Bridget Foley, former executive editor and chief fashion critic of WWD, and unlike Halston, that other great fashion star who spent days designing and debauching at Studio 54, Klein remained a powerful force for decades. Foley wrote in WWD in 2008, "My philosophy has always been the same. It's always been spare. It's always been about sensuality. It's always been sophisticated. And above all, it's always represented what I think is modern." Klein told WWD in 1984. Calvin Klein and Carla Bruni posed for pictures during a preview of 7th Avenue Designers. George Shinsey, WWD. Klein's advertising gained notoriety in 1980 when he put a 15-year-old Brooke Shields in a pair of his Calvin Klein jeans, and she purred, "You want to know what comes in between me and my Calvins? Nothing." As Klein told WWD in 1994, "I didn't set out thinking how to be controversial, only how to make this woman look to die for, a killer, with no obvious effort. But all of a sudden, people get upset. With Brooke Shields years ago, I thought it was a hoot. But all these people went crazy. We need newness and excitement in fashion. That's what it's about. That's what puts the fun in fashion. We're always questioning people's values. How much can you provoke? How much are they willing to show? Is it decent? Is it exciting? Is it valid? Is it over the line? It's a whole process, but it's not about trying to be controversial or trendy." Klein took his hits along the way, especially when the federal government investigated his kiddie porn. Rumpus Room CK Jeans campaign shot by Steven Meisel in 1995. "I don't think newness is ever over, or staying on the edge." He told WWD in 2000, "Fashion is about change. You have to keep evolving and changing. It has to be new. You have to keep pushing it." Calvin Klein co-founded Calvin Klein Inc. with his best friend, Barry Schwartz, in 1968 after Schwartz lent him $10,000 and they started producing coats. Klein, who attended the Fashion Institute of Technology, and Schwartz opened offices at Manhattan's York Hotel at 488 7th Avenue to get the business going. Throughout their 35-year partnership, Schwartz and Klein made every major decision together. Schwartz handled the business, and Klein handled the creative. In an interview in 2008, 5 years after selling the company, Schwartz said he was most proud of how large and well-known the company became. Under their watch, CKO was profitable every year it was in business. "I'm most proud of the numbers, the amount of money we were able to make. I'm also proud of building a world-class brand." When things were going great, they were comparing the brand to McDonald's and Coca-Cola, said Schwartz. At the outset, Klein designed 6 neatly cut architectural coats and 3 dresses and wheeled them across town on a clothes rack to an appointment at luxury boutique Baumwood Teller. Klein left Bonwit Teller with a $50,000 order to fulfill. In 1973, the label unveiled a complete line of women's sportswear. This was the time when American fashion was on the rise and Halston was the king. Klein made his mark with beautiful coats and his clean-cut, all-American sportswear. That year, he won his first Coty American Fashion Critics Award. In 1974, he won his second Coty Award and divorced his first wife, Jane. The following year, Klein received his third Coty Award, becoming the only designer to win 3 consecutive Cotys. In 1977, Klein's daughter Marcy was kidnapped on her way to school, and the designer immediately delivered the $100,000 ransom, and Marcy was returned. Her kidnappers, her babysitter Paul Ransay, Ransay's half-brother, Dominique, and his friend, Cecil Wiggins, were arrested 2 days later. Also that year, Studio 54 opened, and Klein became a fixture, along with the likes of Liza Minnelli, Halston, and Andy Warhol. In 1978, Klein added Calvin Klein men's tailored clothing and sportswear, and Calvin Klein jeans was launched via a license with Puritan. 2 years later, the 15-year-old Shields was featured in the Calvin Klein jeans ad campaign, and the brand soon became a denim juggernaut. In 1978, Calvin Klein Cosmetics Co., owned by Klein and Schwartz, launched its first fragrance, Calvin Klein. In 1980, the Minnetonka Corp. bought the rights to produce Calvin Klein Cosmetics for $1 million, stock and ongoing royalties under a license to use the Calvin Klein trademark. The following year, Klein launched his first men's fragrance, Calvin for Men. In 1982, the designer expanded with Calvin Klein underwear for men, setting off another phenomenon by launching the designer-branded intimate apparel category. In 1983, Klein added women's underwear and bought Puritan, its jeans licensee, for $68 million. In the meantime, in 1983, Klein publicly rebutted growing speculation about his health, denying to WWD that he was dying of AIDS. In a front-page 1983 article, he told WWD, "I'm in great health. For a long time I wouldn't even discuss it, because people tend to believe that denials are a way of hiding the truth. But now it's gotten way out of proportion. And Barry even had to call my mother when I was away to tell her I'm okay. I understand why I may be a target. I'm young, I'm successful, I'm not so bad looking, and I enjoy living life in the fast lane. It's good gossip." In 1985, the Calvin Klein Obsession fragrance was introduced, and the following year, Klein married Kelly Rector. In 1988, the designer added the Eternity fragrance and named Christy Turlington the face of the Richard Avedon Shot campaign, catapulting her to supermodel status and kicking off a long-term collaboration between the model and the designer. Klein checked himself into the Hazelden Foundation Rehab Center to undergo treatment for reported alcohol and prescription drug abuse. Carolyn Bessette started working at a Calvin Klein store in Boston. In 1989, the Minnetonka Corp. was sold to a subsidiary of Unilever plc, giving ownership of the Klein beauty business to the Anglo-Dutch giant. Klein entered the bridge category with CK Calvin Klein Women's apparel in 1992. He turned Kate Moss into a household name with a series of underwear ads featuring Moss with marquee Mark Wahlberg and the slogan, "The best protection against AIDS is to keep your Calvins on." Moss posed nude in 1993 in Obsession ads, drawing much attention, both negative and controversial, for her waifish frame that helped usher in the model era dubbed heroin chic. In an unprecedented marketing move in 1994, Klein launched the first unisex fragrance with CK1, complete with a striking black and white commercial featuring Moss and a crew of downtown types. That year, Warnaco Group acquired Calvin Klein's underwear business and trademark. Warnaco was also granted a men's small leather goods accessories license. Gabriella Fort, former head of Giorgio Armani's U.S. operations, was named president and chief operating officer of Calvin Klein Inc. In 1995, the Calvin Klein Collection boutique opened at 650 for Madison Avenue, underscoring Klein's minimalism with a groundbreaking interior. Designed by British architect John Pawson that would influence store design for years to come. That same year, Klein launched the home category with bed, bath, and tabletop items. Klein drew more controversy, this time with the feds, for his Steven Meisel shot campaign featuring teen models in a basement set, reminiscent of 60s pornography. In 1996, the designer followed the success of CK1 with CKB. Tom Murray, president of Tahari Inc., was named president of CK Calvin Klein, succeeding Denise Siegel, and Warnaco acquired Designer Holdings, the maker of Calvin Klein jeans. In 1997, Calvin Klein Inc. teamed with Swiss watchmaker SMH for a license for the sale of Calvin Klein watches. SMH changed its name to the Swatch Group Limited. In 1998, Klein introduced the fragrance Contradiction. In 1999, Polo Ralph Lauren defeated plaintiff Calvin Klein Cosmetics Co. in a lawsuit claiming that the bottle of Ralph Lauren's romance fragrance was a knockoff of Calvin Klein's Eternity packaging. That same year, Klein came under fire for an ad campaign featuring children in underwear, considered by some to be child pornography. The Mario Testino shot photos caused a nationwide outrage. While Klein had been involved in controversial ads before, most notably with the Moss ads for Obsession and the Steven Meisel photographed ones, this campaign backfired. The brand canceled plans to unveil a billboard in Times Square during New York Fashion Week. That same year, Ford resigned from Klein, and Murray became the company's president and chief operating officer. Klein was presented with a plaque on 7th Avenue's Fashion Walk of Fame. In 2000, that same year, Klein sued his biggest licensee, Warnaco, for federal trademark violations and unauthorized distribution of CK jeanswear product, demanding the license back. Warnaco fired back with a counterclaim in June, charging CK with ongoing and intentional breach of its obligations to Warnaco under several licensing agreements. Warnaco also sued CK and the designer, personally, for defamation and trade libel, arising from comments he made on the Larry King Live show. In 2001, just days before the start of a jury trial in federal court, CK unilaterally ended Warnaco's Calvin Klein jeanswear license, filing papers in a Manhattan state court declaring the company had the right to end the license. 7 days later, on January 22, Klein and Linda Wagner, Warnaco's then chairman and chief executive officer, literally kissed and made up after reaching an 11th-hour settlement. Terms of the settlement were not disclosed, but Warnaco was given the Calvin Klein jeanswear license until 2044. In a big moment for the company, Phillips Van Heusen Corp., now known as PVH Corp., which at the time was best known as a maker of men's shirts, acquired Calvin Klein Inc. from Klein and Schwartz in 2003. In 2010, Calvin Klein Inc. said it would build on its iconic unisex fragrance, and together with Warnaco Inc. and the Coty Prestige unit Calvin Klein Fragrances, would launch a CK1 global contemporary brand, with jeanswear, underwear and swimwear. That year, Klein signed an exclusive deal with model Laura Stone as the face of Calvin Klein collection, CK Calvin Klein and Calvin Klein jeans for fall. In March 2012, Calvin Klein took its European CK Calvin Klein apparel and accessories businesses in-house. CKI terminated its existing licensing agreements with Warnaco Group for the distribution and sale of CK Calvin Klein apparel and accessories and the operation of retail stores, effective in 2013. Consequently, PVH International, a division of PVH that also managed the Tommy Hilfiger brand globally, PVH added to its designer stable with the $3 billion acquisition of Tommy Hilfiger in 2010, established a dedicated team to operate the CK Calvin Klein apparel and accessories business in Europe. In November 2012, PVH Corp said it would acquire Warnaco Group in a deal valued at $2.9 billion. Warnaco's Calvin Klein businesses would be folded into the Calvin Klein Inc. division of PVH and run by CKI Tom Murray. Nearly 75% of Warnaco's business was with the Calvin Klein brand. After holding runway shows at its 205 West 39th Street headquarters for 5 years, Calvin Klein Inc. staged the spring collection show in 2013 at the new, as yet unopened Spring Studios in Tribeca. Calvin Klein was the first and only fashion house to show at Spring Studios during Fashion Week. In November 2012, PVH Corp said it would acquire Warnaco Group in a deal valued at $2.9 billion. Warnaco's Calvin Klein businesses would be folded into the Calvin Klein Inc. division of PVH and run by CKI Tom Murray. Nearly 75% of Warnaco's business was with the Calvin Klein brand. April 2016, it was reported that Francisco Costa and Italo Zucchelli would be leaving the company. Fall 2016 marked Costa's last women's show for the house. After months of speculation, Calvin Klein appointed R.A.F. Simons, who had exited Christian Dior as its creative director a year earlier, as chief creative officer of the brand in 2016, overseeing all aspects of design, global market and communications, and visual creative services. He assumed the creative strategy of the Calvin Klein brand globally across the company's ready-to-wear, bridge, sportswear, jeans, underwear and home lines. Peter Mulier also joined as creative director, reporting to Simons, and responsible for executing Simons' creative and design vision for men's or TW, bridge and better apparel and accessories. It was also reported that Kevin Kerrigan resigned from the company for a creative role at Ralph Lauren.